Today's daf we're going to be learning is Shevuot daf Kaf Zayin. Today's daf is sponsored by Judy Shapira in honor of Shira Krebs, our fearless Minneapolis Hadran convener, on yesterday's Freilich wedding of her daughter Yomi to Yaakov Zimberg. Mazel tov. Today's daf is sponsored by Tali Oberman in honor of her grandmother Barbara Oberman, who has contributed greatly to the Jewish people and celebrated her 90th birthday this week. Okay, let's get started with our daf. We're going to be learning a new Mishnah. We have two Mishnayot to deal with today. The first one is Nishma levatel et mitzvah v'lo bitel patur. Okay, it's a topic we've dealt with a bunch of times. Until now, we've been really talking about mitzvah. It's hard, you can't say you're going to not do a mitzvah or yes do a mitzvah. If we talk about why I can't take an oath, or again, I might take an oath, but it's not going to be the oath that I'm liable by the Torah law for keeping a mitzvah, for example, we said it's because we're already mushba v'omei mehar Sinai. If you haven't listened yet to Alana's Shiur, right? She has two-part Shiur. The second part will come this week, all connected kind of to Shevuot, which is nice, which is what is, first of all, where were we mushba v'omei mehar Sinai? That's question number one, right? And then what are the ramifications of this is going to be the second Shiur. Very interesting. Or where did we take the oath, and why is that relevant to us? We didn't take the oath. Why are we, as if we took the oath? Okay, that's the whole first shiur. So anyway, generally we say, and this is a question I'm going to raise on today's sugya, that the reason why mitzvot are not connected to these oaths at all, right? Levatel mitzvah I can't do because I'm not allowed to go against what we agreed to we would do in the Torah. Also, to take an oath that I'm not going to do a mitzvah, for example, or that I'm not going to take an oath that, I won't do something that's already forbidden by Torah law. We generally say, Ein shvuah halal shvuah. I was already commanded not to do this. So if I add it, that was the eating non-kosher and all that, right? Unless I add something additional. But this is a little different, and maybe that's the difference between this sugya. We're going to talk about lekayem mitzvah. And levatel mitzvah is not, these are going to be mitzvot aseh, positive commandments. So now the question is, what? I wasn't commanded to keep positive mitzvot. Perhaps it's really like the whole ein shvuah halal shvuah that I've already took an oath. So if I take another one, there's nowhere for it to go. That's more on negative transgressions, okay? Because I was commanded I won't eat non-kosher, and therefore I can't take another oath I won't eat non-kosher food. But this is more in terms of positive, like I won't eat matzah on Pesach, or I will eat matzah on Pesach, okay? So perhaps that's why, we don't know. This Mishnah doesn't relate to that whole issue of I was already commanded at Har Sinai, and therefore this oath has nowhere to go. So that's a possible answer as to why. I'm kind of, before we were learning this, I'm raising a basic question that the sugya doesn't directly relate to. But anyway, let's start. Nishba levatel et mitzvah v'lo bitel patur. So I take an oath. I'm going to not keep a mitzvah. I'm going to, right, eat chametz on Pesach or something, right, to make sure, or I'm not going to eat matzah on Pesach or something like that. Right, I guess it would be more, I'm not going to eat matzah on Pesach and lo bitel, and then I ate matzah on Pesach. So I didn't not keep the mitzvah. Okay, forget the chametz example. The matzah is really the right example here. I'm exempt from an oath, okay? First of all, there's nothing wrong. I ate matzah on Pesach, which is great. I did the mitzvah, and my oath was totally irrelevant. L'kayem v'lo kiyem patur. If I say I'm going to eat matzah, I take an oath, I'm going to eat matzah on Pesach, and then I don't. So it didn't fulfill the mitzvah of eating matzah on Pesach, but I'm exempt from my oath because it's not an oath. Okay, this whole pasuk la we're going to see just doesn't relate to mitzvot at all. It's not relevant in a mitzvah category, and that's something we're going to have to prove today. Shahaya b'din sheheh chayav k'drei Rabbi Yehuda ben Beteira. This we saw, by the way, quoted already. It's a very strange line. Usually the Mishna doesn't say this. The Mishna just says, well, so-and-so says this, so-and-so says that, instead of introducing it like that. And I don't have an answer as to why. But the Mishnah says, you might have thought that one would be liable, as Rabbi Yehuda ben Beteira says, but the rabbis think not. So what does Rabbi Yehuda ben Beteira say? Amar Rabbi Yehuda ben Beteira, now they do make mention of mushba mehar Sinai, but not in the way that I said. Now, you might have thought like this. If the pasuk applies to reshut, which obviously it does too, meaning I just take an oath about anything that I could or couldn't do. If I want, I can. I don't want to, I don't have to. But here I take an oath I'm going to. Like, for example, I'm going to eat this bread today. Okay? If I say that and I have to follow through, all the more so if it's something that already God commanded me to do. Shouldn't we think all the more so? I'd be obligated? Okay, if I already took an oath at Har Sinai to do it, and then I take an additional oath, wouldn't you think I'd be more obligated? Right? By the way, Rabbi Yehuda Beteira obviously doesn't think, right, ain't shvuah chalal shvuah here. Right? He thinks I was already commanded, and all the more so then if I take my own oath on it, it should be more important, right? If we talk about what's more important, mitzvot are obviously more important than optional things. So all the more so I should have to keep my oath. So wouldn't I be obligated? Amrulo, the rabbi said to him, and you would expect them to say, right? You already were commanded, but that's not what they say, which is why, like I said, it begs the question, what happened to Ein Shvuah Chalal Shvuah? Amrulo, lo. I said to him, no. Im amarta b'shvuah reshut sheken asa b'alav kehen, tomar b'shvuah mitzvah shelo asa b'alav kehen. We said in Shvuah reshut, it goes in both ways. Whatever I say, I take an oath to do. If I have to potentially be able to say, I can't do that. So if I want to say, I'm going to eat this bread today, it has to be the kind of oath that I could say, I won't eat this bread today, right? I take an oath, I won't eat this bread today. So that works for reshut. It doesn't work for mitzvah. Because even if you would say, I take an oath, I'm going to eat matzah on Pesach, that would be valid. But let's try it the other way. I'm not going to eat, right? I'm not going to eat matzah on Pesach. I can't do that. That's a shevuot that goes against the Torah. Because then I'm preventing myself from eating matzah on Pesach. So therefore, patur, for sure, if I said, I'm not going to eat matzah, and, right, it's interesting because that's how we started, right? But to the rabbis, that's obvious. The only question would be, can I take an oath l'kayem mitzvah? That's the part that Rabbi Yehuda and Beteira is arguing about. Everyone agrees that levatel mitzvah. Of course, I can't take an oath against what the Torah says. No way can I do that. So there's their argument. We're going to come back to this later. Now we're going to start with a braita. The first part of today's stuff is quite confusing. I would say most of Amud Aleph. So I'm going to try to help you to organize it and keep it clear, because if you find it long-winded and confusing, it is. Let's start. We have a braita. Okay, the first way I'll organize, there's 5 limudim, 5 drashot in the braita. 4 are of one type of drasha, and the 5th is a little bit different. We'll see. The first 4 are going to start off Yachol, you might have thought, okay? And we're going to go like this. You might have thought X is Chayav, okay? This would be a Shevuot. Talmud Lomar, it's not. And we're going to do that in 1, 2, and 4. In 3, we're going to say you might have thought this one is exempt, and it's not. You're obligated. So we're going to have 3 in the end that you're not obligated for, and then 1 that you are obligated for in the 4 cases, okay? And they kind of split into the first 2 are one category, the second 2 are a different category. So that's the first part. Yachol nishba levatel et mitzvah v'lo bitel yeh chayav. Okay, this is our issue. The first 2 are going to be our issue: levatel mitzvah and lekayem mitzvah. How do we know from this drasha we're going to get to in this midrash halacha? How do you know you're not chayav for both those? The nishba levatel and nishba lekayem, the first 2 in our Mishna. So this is like an expansive braita on what the Mishna said. So you might have thought levatel et mitzvah v'lo bitel you be chayav. You might have thought I take an oath to not do a mitzvah, I'd be obligated. Talmud Lomar, lehara o lehetiv. Because the pasuk says lahara o lehetiv, we're going to assume this a lot today, which is just like we're going to have whatever case it would be lehetiv, it has to be in the parallel lahara. So what does that mean? Well, ma tava reshut. Now they make a certain assumption that only after we finish this braita is the Gemara going to say, where did they make this assumption from? Okay, so just now accept it as an assumption. Ma hatava reshut, just like lehitiv is optional, is discussing optional mitzvah, optional things. Okay, I will eat, I won't eat is not related to a mitzvah. Av hara'a reshut. So therefore, also to not do something. So I can't take an oath to not keep a mitzvah because I can't take an oath to yes keep a mitzvah. And therefore, otzi nishba levatel et mitzvah v'lo bitel shu patur. So therefore, if I say I'm not going to sit in a sukkah this year, okay? And I do sit in the sukkah, I'm going to be patur, okay? Because just like I can't take an oath to yes sit in a sukkah, since I can't take that oath, it's invalid. Also, the oath to not keep a mitzvah is invalid. And now they're going to do the reverse, just a little confusing. You might have thought, now, the assumption of this braita is that if I'm doing levatel, it must be I'm saying I'm not going to do something, and that's lahara. And to do something, it's going to be lehetiv. I will do something. So now they're going to say maybe likayem mitzvah v'lo kiyem shechayav, to do the mitzvah. Maybe I be obligated. Talmud lamar lahara uleitiv. Mahara reshut, afatava reshut. Well, just like to not do, which we just proved, right? You can't not do a mitzvah. Can't say I'm not going to do it. Afatava, meaning it's only the not doing oath is only in a reshut category, optional, not mitzvah. Af hatava reshut, also to do is also a mitzvah. Isra reshut, not a mitzvah. So therefore, kiyum mitzvah is out. Okay, this is a bit circular reasoning, right? Once we don't have one, we don't have the other. Okay, but that's the assumption here. Okay, I just want to check one thing. Right, the way Rashi says this, maybe it's a little better. The first one, the fact that it's Eina bibitul mitzvah, you can't do hatava bibitul mitzvah because you can't say I will eat on Yom Kippur because that goes against the Torah. Okay, and therefore, if you say I won't, right, I won't do something, it also can't be because you can't make an oath to eat on Yom Kippur. And when we go to the bitul mitzvah, I can't say I won't eat matzah because that goes against the Torah, and therefore I also can't say I'm going to keep a mitzvah. I'm going to yes eat matzah. Okay, can't say I won't eat matzah, so therefore you can't say I will eat matzah. Not exactly circular because it's each referring to a different case. And just like I can't say I will eat on Yom Kippur, therefore I also can't say I won't eat on Yom Kippur. Okay, or I won't. Mitzvah. Second, right? No, that wouldn't be. I won't. No, that wouldn't be it. Okay, if I will eat on Yom Kippur, or I will eat chametz for Pesach, right? Then you can't do bitul mitzvah like I won't eat matzah on Pesach. Okay, tough. So now that was stage one and stage two. So stage one and stage two assumes that it's all talking about reshut, basically the pasuk. Okay, which, like I said, later we're going to get to where is it so clear to them that it's all about reshut, and it's operating on this assumption that hara'an and tavar are parallel, and since you can't have the case in one, you can't have the case in the other. Stage three. Yachol nishba lahara la'atzmo. Okay, you might have thought that you can take an oath. If you took an oath to, let's say, hurt yourself, okay, v'lo hera, and then you didn't do it. Yachol yehe patur. This is the one that we're going to actually start off thinking maybe you're exempt and actually end with you're obligated. Talmud lomar lahara uleitiv. This is the common thread here. Okay, one of the common threads is we're going to compare lahara and leitiv. Okay, and the other common thread is that we're going to talk about reshut. Now, reshut is there, it was about kiyum mitzvot. Okay, now it's going to be possibly going against what the Torah says or doing something that's optional for you to do. Ma hatava reshut, afara reshut. Avinish b'alara latzmo v'lo irasha reshut biyado. If you want to injure yourself, you can. Now, there are certain ways we learn you can't really inflict injury upon yourself, but this seems to assume that it's okay to do it to yourself. What we're going to see in a minute is it's not okay to do to someone else. So therefore, since if I want to, I can. If I take an oath about it, it's actually valid because the whole concept of hara'an atava, right, this whole oath, is to do something that's optional. Fourth possibility. Yachol nishba laharala, the fourth drasha. Yachol nishba laharala chirim v'lo hera she'echayat. Maybe if I say I'm going to do something bad to you and then I don't do it, maybe I'll be obligated because I didn't keep what I said I was going to do. Talmud lamal lehara o lehetiv ma tava reshut afara reshut. So just like doing something is good, also not doing something is optional. Also not doing something is optional. Otzi nishba lahara la'achirim v'lo hera, right? Because we're obviously in the category of doing bad. Lahara, to do something bad. Well, if I say I'm going to do something bad to you, ain't a reshut biyado. I don't have the possibility. I'm not allowed to just hit you if I want. Not allowed to do that. The Torah never says you can't hit someone, I don't believe. But it does say you're going to be liable damages if you hit someone, right? It's obvious from the Torah you're not allowed to do that. So therefore, it's not something that's optional, and therefore, if I take an oath about it, it's not a valid oath. Okay, so the premise of these four drashot are number one, let's start with the pasuk is talking about reshut only, things that are optional, not things I'm not allowed to do, okay, that are forbidden to me or that or that I'm obligated to do because they're mitzvot. Okay, so we have, I can't because it's forbidden to do it, or I have to do it because I have to do it. It's a mitzvah. So oaths do not apply to that. And then maybe, one is more obvious than the other, but once we have it in hara'ah, it doesn't work. It's also not going to work in hatava. That's basically, or hatava, it's not going to work in hara'ah, which again, difference between hara'ah and hatava. Hara'ah, well, we're going to talk about some more differences, but hara'ah is generally, I will not do something. Hatava is, I will do something. Okay, so we're going to add some other element of hara'ah and hatava. Okay, which maybe a little more has to do with the way the words are, right? Hara'ah is to do something bad, and hatava is to do something good. Until now, we've been understanding good and bad as positive action, negative action, right? I will do something, I will not do something. Okay, so what we did in these 4 drashot, okay, let's just summarize. You might have thought I could make an oath. Maybe it would be an oath if I said, I'm not going to eat levatel mitzvah. Okay, like I'm not going to eat matzah. For example, I'm not going to sit in the sukkah. No. Okay, because it doesn't exist in the other side, it also doesn't exist in this side. Okay, I'm not going to eat matzah, or maybe to yes eat matzah. That also doesn't work because I can't do the reverse in the hara'ah. So neither of those are oaths, which means again, if I say an oath like that, I'm not going to bring the korban olav yored. I will mention that there's a big debate among the commentaries about this. Is it still an oath though? Like for example, if I go against my oath intentionally, do I get lashes for it? And as is just not part of this hara'ah tava and the pasuk, in our pasuk specifically, which is all about the korban, our pasuk doesn't talk about, right, what if I don't keep my word, like lo yachel dvaro, maybe that still applies. And that's a debate among the commentaries. I'm not going to get into that because it's not really in our daf, but it is something that comes out of our daf. Is it an oath? It's just not the oath that you get to bring this korban olav yored that you have to bring if you accidentally don't keep your oath, or is it not an oath at all? And that's an interesting question in of itself. Then we had this, if I want to injure myself, that does come under the category of reshut. But if I want to injure someone else, I can't say, that I'm going to injure someone else. That's not an oath that's valid because it's not a reshut. It's not up to me to decide if I want to do that or not. 5th drasha. We have one last part of this section. Now we got rid of hara'at achirim. I can't take an oath, right? If I take an oath, I'm going to hurt you. It's not relevant. Okay, in a minute, we're going to see what hara'at achirim is. Only at the end of the braita, they're going to define it, which really means I'm going to punch you in the face and, blow your brains out or something. So, minayin lirabot hatavat achirim. How do we know if I take an oath, though, that I'm going to give you a gift? I'm going to do something nice for you, that I actually have to keep it. That's a valid oath. Talmud lomar o lehetiv. Because it says lahara o lehetiv, which we're going to get back to this whole drasha later today. It could have said, you take an oath, lahara o lehetiv, to do bad and to do good. Okay? That would have been an okay way to write it. Why do you say to do bad and or to do good? Why do you need the word or? It's unnecessary. We'll have a whole debate later. Is it really unnecessary? Okay, but right now, this braita assumes it's unnecessary. And therefore, from there we include, if I want to do something, even though it's not, hara'at achirim is not an option, but hatavat achirim is an oath. I say, I promise I'm going to do something nice for you, I have to keep it. And if I don't, right, and I forget, and I don't do it, then I have to bring this korban olav yored. Ezo hi hara'at achirim. Now just the braita to define something we mentioned earlier. Aked ploni va'afatzat mocho. Okay, I'll hit so-and-so and knock his brains out. Okay, very pleasant. Now, that's the braita. So 5 sections of the braita, which we just reviewed, so we're going to move on. Now the Gemara wants to know, and this is a little bit long-winded, also complicated. Mimai dekrai b'dvar hareshut k'tive. Why is it so obvious that it's talking about dvar reshut and not dvar mitzvah? And they're going to basically try to suggest that by process of elimination, okay, because it can't be that the Mishnah is talking about mitzvah, and you're going to see why. Dilma bidvar mitzvah k'tive, right? So they suggest maybe it's talking about a mitzvah. Who's to say it's not? So for this question, we're going to have one answer, which is the complicated one. We're going to reject it in the end, okay? Then we're going to move on, and then the daf will get easier at that point. We're going to have 2 more possible answers, okay? With the second answer, we're going to have a difficulty according to one opinion. So because of that, we're going to have to bring an answer, a different answer according to that opinion. Okay, that's the way this section is going to work. So the Gemara says, lo salkadata. It doesn't make any sense to say that this is talking about bar mitzvah. Why? Debe'inan, as we saw before, hatava dumia dahara'a v'hara'a dumia hatava. Okay, the first topic sentence here is, well, since the hatava and hara'a are juxtaposed in the pasuk, and it's this or that, so that means that this one has to be like that one, and that one has to be like this one. And now we're going to start with one, derive that, and we're going to do like two tracks here. One, we're going to start with the hatava, okay, and get to hara'a and say, well, it's clear from here, if the hara'a has to be like the hatava, we'll never get to a case of mitzvah. And then we're going to do the same, starting with hara'a and getting to hatava, and there wouldn't be a hatava in the mitzvah realm. Okay, so let's do it. Ma hara'a eina b'kiyum mitzvah. Okay. Hara'a is not the key. I'm sorry, did I just skip? Okay, hara'a, sorry. Ma'atava eina bebitul mitzvah. Af hara'a eina bebitul mitzvah. Okay, there's going to be three stages for each of these sides. First stage, hatava is not bebitul mitzvah. What does that mean? I can't say something positive that's going to cancel a mitzvah, like I can't say I'm going to eat chametz on Pesach. An oath like that is not going to be valid because, again, goes against the Torah. That's obvious. I can't say an oath that says I'm going to eat chametz on Pesach would never be valid. In that case, so that's stage one. Stage two is af hara'a ina bebitul mitzvah. If I say, what would be a hara'a that cancels out a mitzvah? In other words, a hatava that cancels out a mitzvah is I will eat chametz on Pesach because it's a positive formulation that cancels out a mitzvah. Now I need a negative formulation that cancels a mitzvah. I will not eat matzah on Pesach. That's a negative formulation that cancels out a mitzvah. So well, maybe you would think that you can. In other words, this goes back to the distinction I mentioned at the beginning of Daf, which is a nishba levatel mitzvah means I'm not going to keep a positive commandment. For sure, I can't take an oath. And what's more intuitive is I can't take an oath to eat chametz on Pesach. To eat chametz is forbidden. So I can't take an oath to forbid, right, to basically create a situation where I'm forbidding something the Torah said. So that for sure can't. Maybe, though, you could take an oath to not keep a positive commandment. So even that you can't, because that would be the parallel, right? The positive to cancel a mitzvah, and the negative, once the positive can't be to cancel a mitzvah, also the negative can't be to cancel a mitzvah. So those are both not options. So what's the only other option that's left for a negative then? Maybe I could word something in a negative formulation to actually, right? I can't do it to cancel a mitzvah. Maybe I could do it to keep a mitzvah. Like, I won't eat chametz on Pesach. That's a possibility. That's the only possibility left, right? Because if we negate it already, it can't, right? In the positive, again, we want to focus right now. Let me just be clear. We want to get to the negative formulation can't be a mitzvah. The next track is going to be the positive formulation can't be a mitzvah. But the way to get to a negative formulation can't be a mitzvah is by process of elimination. If we start with maybe I could do a negative levatel mitzvah, that for sure not, because I can't do a positive levatel mitzvah, meaning I can't say I'm going to eat chametz on Pesach. Therefore, I can't say the negative, which is I won't eat matzah on Pesach. That would be a negative to cancel the positive mitzvah. Okay. So what's left is, if we want to say maybe the pasuk is talking about mitzvah, theoretically I could say maybe I'm not going to eat chametz on Pesach, because that would be l'kayem mitzvah. But now, why would that not be a good possibility? So the Gemara says, okay, what's missing here is the transition from 2 to 3. But that's what I just did for you. The Gemara doesn't say those words, which is basically the only option you're left with in negative command in lehara, a negative formulation would be a negative commandment to yes, keep a mitzvah. I will not eat chametz on Pesach, which is good because I'm right. What's the problem? Well, hara'a gufa hatavahi. But wait, the word hara'a means to do something bad. It's not just to word something in the negative, which is the way we've been understanding it until now, but it's also to do something bad. Now, if I say I'm not going to eat chametz on Pesach, that's not bad. That's good, right? So inherently, that's a good thing, which means hara'a can't be referring to that because hara'a means to do something bad, which is something new. We didn't discuss this before. Hara'a, we assumed until now, even though it does come from the root bad, just means negative formulation. Now we're saying, but it also must mean to do something bad. So it can't possibly be that the Torah in saying lehara means if I said, I will not eat chametz on Pesach, because that is inherently good, because there's something good for me about it, because it's good for my soul, because I'm keeping a mitzvah. So it can't be the pasuk means that, because otherwise it wouldn't use the formulation hara'ah. And therefore, there's no option for mitzvah for hara'ah. Hara'ah can't be mitzvah, levatel mitzvah, and it can't be now, we said, lekayem mitzvah. Okay, now we're going to do the exact same thing, the mirror image of this, to show that hatava can't be to do or to not do a mitzvah. But now we're going to do it in the reverse way. Akish hatava lahara'ah. Since they're both juxtaposed, we're going to learn from one to the other. So mahara'ah eina b'kiyum mitzvah. Well, since you can't do, as we just proved a second ago, you can't do hara'ah l'kayem mitzvah. You can't say, I won't eat chametz on Pesach, because, right, that's not a vow, because that's not an oath, because that would be a good thing, and it wouldn't fit into the word hara'ah. Well, afatava ina b'kiyum mitzvah. You can't say, I will do something like I will eat matzah on Pesach, because that would be the parallel to the hara'ah b'kiyum mitzvah. So if there's no hara'ah b'kiyum mitzvah, there's no hatava b'kiyum mitzvah. So now what's left? Hatava b'bitul mitzvah. I will eat chametz on Pesach. Well, that obviously you can't, because hatava gufa hara'ahi. For the same reason we couldn't say on the other side, that in and of itself is inherently bad, right? If I say I'm going to eat chametz on Pesach, that's doing something bad. So it can't be included in the word hatava. So there's no option for hatava b'kiyum mitzvah. There's no option for hatava b'bitul mitzvah. And with that, we reject the possibility that the pasuk was talking about a mitzvah. What's the problem? Well, the problem is the Gemara is going to say, after this long-winded argument, they're going to say, Ihachi bidvar reshut nami lo mishkachala. One of the things that makes this Gemara difficult is that the Gemara doesn't spell everything out this time. They just kind of say it, and you have to figure out what they mean. So what does this mean? Well, in dvar reshut, you could say the exact same thing. In other words, and this is basically saying, whoever brought in the negative formulation and the word lahara has to be something that's bad for you. This whole theory, if you're assuming what we just assumed, that has to be bad for you, well, it doesn't work for reshut either, because let's try to spell it out. If you want to do now, food we know, let's take food as an example. Sometimes eating food is good for you, and sometimes eating food is bad for you. We all know there's foods that we eat that are bad for us, right? Whether it's personally, you get stomach aches from certain foods, or you're allergic to certain foods, or whatever it might be. So if you take, let's plug in now. You do a hatava, we'll just plug in the first one, okay? We don't have to do both, but let's start with hatava, the first one we started with. Since there's no hatava in this case, there's no hara'ah in that case, and then the only thing left for hara'ah is this, and that wouldn't make sense. So let's go through that. Let's say I take an oath, I'm not going to eat a food that's bad for me, okay? So now, sorry, I said the reverse. I am going to eat, we're doing hatava. I am going to eat a food that's bad for me, okay? There's no such thing. Because why? That's inherently bad, right? If I say, let's say I'm allergic to gluten, and I take an oath, I'm going to eat gluten, that's bad for me, okay? That's not an oath, because that's bad. That's not good. Then, okay, so let's do the flip case, okay? So now I say, I'm not going to eat something that's good for me, okay? Because that would be the reverse case. Because again, in the first formulation was levatel mitzvah and levatel mitzvah. So we have to do something that's, right, the oath that I worded positively was bad for me. So the oath I worded negatively was bad for me. Okay. So I say, I'm not going to eat something that's very healthy. Okay. So that can't be an oath, because we just said, if I do it in hatava, it can't do it in hara'ah, right? The hara'ah has to be parallel. That's parallel to something that's not an oath. So that wouldn't be it. So then what would it be? I'm not going to eat gluten then. Okay. If I take an oath, I'm not going to eat gluten, and I have celiac. So if I say that, that's good for me. And then we're back to square one. That means the only oath I could, right? That is not an oath lahara. And then we have no case of hara. So basically this whole confusing logic, I would say, right, ends up more confusing, because it's not just true for mitzvah, it's true for reshut as well. And therefore we reject this reason. What were we trying to do? We were trying to prove, how do we know the pasuk is about mitzvah and is about reshut and not about mitzvah at all, which was a running assumption of everything we've been saying on this page. So now we have to try option number 2. אלא מדאיצטריך או לרבות הטבת אחרים, שמע מינה בדבר רשות כתיבי. The O in the fifth part of that braita, what do we learn? O comes to include doing something good for someone. Okay? Remember, if I say I'm going to give you a gift, that is a good oath. Well, that proves that it's Farber. Why does that prove it? Well, think about it. If it was talking about dvar mitzvah, and I could take an oath to yes, keep a mitzvah, not keep a mitzvah, or either which way. Hashta hara'at achirim itrabe. Well, if the pasuk's talking about a mitzvah, I could theoretically, yes, take an oath. It would be a valid oath to do something bad to someone, because the assumption is la ra'uleitiv. I could do yes to keep a mitzvah, not to keep a mitzvah. If that's part of the pasuk, then I could go against the Torah if I want, and I could say I'm going to take an oath to do something bad to you. Okay, that would be included. And if so, hatavat achirim mabaya, I wouldn't even need to say once it's obvious I can do something bad to you, because who cares that there's a mitzvah? If I took an oath against the Torah, it all works. So if that would be included, then I wouldn't need some special drasha to teach me that also doing good for someone would be included. Obviously, if I can do something bad to you, an oath like that, and that oath would be valid. Obviously, doing something good would obviously be a valid oath, and I wouldn't need a special drasha. It's a bit of a complicated way of learning it, like a bit backhanded, but that's how they learn it. Now, this drasha is only going to work according to one opinion of a machloket that we've actually learned a bunch of times already. Okay, both in Sanhedrin and Baba Metzia. Okay, I thought maybe it was a Makot. I see now it's a Baba Metzia. So hi O v'bayale lechalek. But wait, that O is not available to teach. Okay, and this is really not just an issue with this, is an issue on the whole drasha of O l'rabot hatavat achirim. This O is needed for something else. It's needed to say lahara o lehetiv as opposed to lahara and lehetiv. Maybe you would have thought, without the word O, that in order to be liable, this korban olev yored, you would have had to have said a shvuah that I will eat something and a shvuah that I won't eat something, and you'd go against both. And until you do both, you're not obligated. So the answer, you don't need a pasuk for that. So they say, well, it depends what opinion you hold by. Rabbi Yonatan. So according to Rabbi Yonatan, you're right. You don't need a pasuk, and therefore the O can be darshan the way we darshan it. But according to Rabbi Yoshia, you need the O there. Without the O, you really would have gotten confused about what the pasuk means. And therefore, what are you going to say? And that's what we're going to come up with answer number 3. But first, we have to learn Rabbi Yoshia and Rabbi Yonatan. You might not remember them and what they said. So let's learn. Titania. This is a general approach to when the Torah uses the word vav and connects two things. Does it mean this and that, or does it mean this or that? Okay. If vav and means this and that, then you need the O to say, no, it's only one. But if you don't view it that way, that vav means this or that, then you don't need the O at all. The O is unnecessary. So, Isha Sheir Kalel Daviv Etimo, person who curses his father and his mother, or her father and her mother. Ein liela aviv imo. It sounds like you have to curse them both in order to be liable to the death penalty. Aviv v'lo imo, imo v'lo aviv. What if it's just his father or just his mother? Where do you get that from? Talmud Lomar, aviv v'imo kilel. Aviv kilel, imo kilel. Divrei Rabbi Yoshia. If you remember, the way Rabbi Yoshia learns it is, in the beginning of the pasuk it says yikalel is next to the word aviv, and at the end of the pasuk it says aviv v'imo kilel, and imo is next to the word kilel, and from there you learn either the mother or the father. But without that drasha, you wouldn't have learned that. That's Divrei Rabbi Yoshia, and for him it's going to be a problem because he needs the O to separate. If you didn't have the O, you would have thought you have to do an oath also lahara, also lativ, also negative, also positive, and when it go against both of them in order to be obligated the korban. And therefore, it's not free for this drasha, and therefore it can't teach you the whole thing about the dvar mitzvahs out of the pasuk. Rabbi Yonatan omer mashma shtein kechad umashma echad b'fnei atzmo. You could either say both, or you could either say one or the other. In other words, it very easily could be one or the other. Obviously, you'll be obligated if you did both, but you'll also be obligated if you did one or the other on turning out on a bet. Ad shifrot lecha katuv yachdav. Unless the pasuk says together, the word together, it's either or, even if it says this and that. So the mother and the father pasuk, of course, it means either or. Didn't say both of them together. So our pasuk also, unless it says together, you wouldn't need it. You wouldn't, and therefore the O is unnecessary. So now they're going to say, Afilu Tema Rabbi Yoshia. Here's answer number 3. So if you're Rabbi Yoshia, you can't learn it from that second drasha of, oh, you're going to have to learn it some other way. Afilu Tema Rabbi Yoshia. I'll explain according to Rabbi Yoshia. V'savrala Rabbi Akiva dedarish riboy miyute. Now we're going to go back to yesterday's time. Rabbi Akiva darsha riboy miyut. If you remember, what did we say? So Rabbi Yishmael had this klal pratu klal and therefore excluded the past, even though we included something that has no significance. But Rabbi Akiva, darshan ribu u'miut, which basically meant we're going to include lots of things. What are we going to include? We're going to include also past. We're also going to include things that don't have significance. But if you remember, what did we say there? If you say the pasuk is talking about dvar reshut, then what's the mi'ut coming to teach you? If you remember, in the end we said, right, riba kol daval, and therefore included all those things. But my mi'et, if you remember, he said mi'et dvar mitzvah. That something is excluded from that pasuk because it says lahara o lehitiv, which was more specific. So the specific part has to come to exclude something, according to Rabbi Akiva. The only thing left for it to exclude is the dvar mitzvah. But if you say the pasuk is talking about his bar mitzvah, mimai kamimai, then there's nothing for Rabbi Akiva to exclude, and then we're stuck. Okay? Then we have no miut according to Rabbi Akiva. So it's kind of also a process of elimination. There's only one thing to exclude, and that must be what Rabbi Akiva excludes. And so therefore, we're going to learn from the riboy miut of Rabbi Akiva that mitzvah is out. Okay? The pasuk doesn't relate to mitzvah. That's probably the easiest way to learn it, as opposed to all these other long-winded ways. But what we did so far, just to keep the daf in check, we had a braita with 5 explanations, right? 5 different cases that were either including or excluding from that verse, right? 2 in the end were included, 3 were excluded, the 2 mitzvah, l'kayem, levatel mitzvah, and to do bad to others, because all those are either going against a mitzvah or even keeping a mitzvah, but the whole mitzvah topic is out. And that was all based on these assumptions we made about mitzvah, the Torah, the pasuk not talking about a mitzvah. Then we went to, well, where do we know that it's not talking about a mitzvah? We had this very long-winded argument, which basically process of elimination, which in the end we said, well, the same logic would apply to reshut. So that can't possibly be. And then we went to the O. The O is coming, and that whole drasha with the O could only be bidvar reshut, because otherwise it would be necessary, that whole drasha, because you would already have included hitting someone else, which is against a mitzvah, right? If mitzvah was included, and therefore it can't be that, right? That would be one explanation. But if the O is not needed, according to Rabbi Yoshia, then you have to go with the riboy miyut of Rabbi Akiva. Now we're back to the Mishnah. Amar Rabbi Yehuda ben Beteira ma'im harishut. So then there was this argument. Rabbi Yehuda ben Beteira said, look, if rishut, right, which is not so significant, and you have to keep your oath, all the more so mitzvah. So, and then the rabbis respond back, no, because it's not belav v'hein, right? It doesn't go in both directions, because obviously you can't do it against a mitzvah, so therefore to do a mitzvah wouldn't be an oath either. So Rabbanan Shapir Kamar Leila Rabbi Yehuda ben Beteira, they have a pretty good argument. So they say Rabbi Yehuda ben Beteira Amar Lecha, he would answer, and others, and then okay, what the Gemara wants to do is, where's the rest of their conversation? It got cut off in the middle. What did Rabbi Yehuda ben Beteira say back? So Rabbi Yehuda ben Beteira could say the following. Atu hatavat achirim, lav afagav leita bichlal haraat achirim v'Rabbi Rachmana. Okay, so now he's going to say you don't need lav v'hein. How do I know you don't need lav v'hein? But look at drasha 4 and 5 that we had in that braita. The 4th one was I can't take an oath to hurt someone else. That doesn't count. But I can take an oath to do something good for someone else. So those are opposites. And look, it's not belav, it is behain. So obviously this isn't so important. Right? So therefore, I'm going to read it again. You can't do it in the negative. And b'cholofen, Rabbi Rachmana, the Torah says, right? That was the whole O includes the pasuk la'ara l'achirim. Ha'chanami b'kiyum mitzvah. We'll say the same thing about kiyum mitzvah. Af agav deleite b'bitul mitzvah. Rabbi Rachmana, even though you can't do an oath to not do a mitzvah, well, maybe the Torah included that you could do it to keep a mitzvah. V'Rabbanan, what would the rabbis respond to that? You can't compare those two. Because hata ita below etiv, even though it kind of looked like, oh, I could do hatavat achirim, I'll give you a gift. I can't do harat achirim, I'll punch you in the face. But you can do, I won't give you a gift. That's allowed. That's not forbidden for me to say that. So since there is a lav possibility there, I will give you a gift. I won't give you a gift. That works. But hata mi ite below kayem. But if I say I will sit in the sukkah, Well, there's no such thing as I won't sit in the sukkah. Nobody thinks I could say that. And there's no way to say a negative formulation of that, and therefore mitzvah's out. Okay, even though the one with tavat achirim is in. New Mishnah. Shvua shelo ochal kikar zo, shvua shelo ochlena, shvua shelo ochlena. I swear I won't eat this loaf. I swear I won't eat it. I swear I won't eat it. Okay, this is a little difficult to translate because there's ochal and there's ochlena. We don't know the difference. We're going to get to that in the Gemara. But right now, you basically, it sounds like you're saying the same thing 3 times. Okay, and then you eat it. Achala. Eino chayav el achat. We've seen this before. You're only liable one. Zoe Shvuat Bitoy, we also read this already. We had a whole long drasha on this. What is this coming to exclude? But this is a Shvuat Bitoy, an oath of expression, Shchayavim, al Zdonam Akov, al Shigata, or Korban Alev Yored. If you intentionally transgress this kind of vow, you will get karet. And if you do it accidentally, because you forgot you made the oath or something like that, then you bring this Korban Alev Yored, the slime scale offering. This next line really belongs in the next Mishnah. Some printings of the Gemara actually have it in the next Mishnah, but we'll just read it. It's already moving to the next topic, which is an oath in vain. You're chayav. If you do it intentionally, you get lashes. And I said karet, but also lashes. Right? It should have been lashes, donamakot, right? Because karet things you get. Oh, sorry, I'm so wrong. It's not karet, right? We learned it's not karet. Erase what I said. Sorry about that. I got confused. Your chayavim al donamakot. You only get lashes if you do it intentionally. This actually there isn't any karet. That was why it's a chidush. Usually it's karet and lashes go together. This is only lashes, not karet. And right, and the shigat korban levi yored. That's the shvuat bitoy. Where shvuat shav, you get malkot also, but shigata you're exempt from. There is no korban levi yored. It's only by a shvuat bitoy, not by an oath made in vain. Okay, that's the topic we'll deal with next time on Daf Kaftet. Now the Gemara wants to know what's in between ochal and ochlena and why does it say it in that order? Well, they wanted to tell you it's specifically that order. If you do ochal, ochlena, you're only chayav 1. If you start with ochlena and then you go to ochal, you'll be chayav 2. Not 3, but 2, because then you'll do ochal, ochlena, and the third one for sure doesn't apply. Now, why, or ochlena, ochal. The third ochal wouldn't apply, but why is this? What's the difference between ochal and ochlena? Derive, as Rava said, Amar Rava, shvua shelo ochal kikar zo. If I say I won't eat this loaf with the language of I won't ochal, okay? Kevan she'achal mimena kizay chayav. At what point am I liable? When I eat an olive bulk, a regular shiur of eating. Ochal means I won't eat a requisite amount of eating. Shelo ochlena, eino chayav ad she'ochal et kula. Shelo ochlena means I won't eat it completely, meaning I won't devour the entire loaf. So if I eat a kazayit, I won't be liable. So now let's think about it. If I said shelo ochal, I won't eat even a kazayit, and then I say I won't eat the whole thing, well, I already am liable as soon as I eat a kazayit, so I'm not adding anything new. But if I say shelo ochlen, I won't eat the whole thing. And then I say, and I won't even eat a kazayit of it, well, that's a new prohibition. So then as soon as I eat a kazayit, I'm liable 1. If I eat the whole thing, I'm liable 2. That makes a lot of sense. Okay, again, in this language of, if the oath adds, as we learned already many times. So now why do we need the third one? Okay, based on what we said, you only need 2. Why do you need to mention 3? This is very interesting. Even though you're not going to be chayav shvuah bitoy on the subsequent shelo ochal, shelo ochlena, or whatever it is, there is still an oath there. Why does that matter? Okay, the question is it still a valid oath? Well, why is it relevant? If there's somewhere for it to lahul, to take effect, it will. Like what? For what relevance would this be? Let's say I go to a chacham and I said, listen, I took an oath that I won't eat this. I want you to undo this oath. So a chacham can undo the oath for you. So if you did that, then what would happen? The second oath would come in. And if you undid the second, the third one. Okay? Meaning, even though you're not going to be liable on an oath of expression, it's still there. So if it has an opportunity to kick in, it will. So which the Gemara says, Lema Maselet. Let's use a proof for this from the following source. Mishna Nadar Shtei Nazirot. Umana rishona v'frisha le'a korban. V'achar kach nish'ala rishona, talo shniya b'rishona. I take upon to be a Nazir twice. That basically means, right, I say Areni Nazir, Areni Nazir. Each Nazirut, Stam Nazir is Shloshim Yom, 30 days. It means I do 30 days, I finish it, I bring the korbanot, I finish the whole process, then I do another 30 days immediately after. Now, let's say I started counting the first 30 days. Then Hifrish Korban, I designated a sacrifice. Then Nish'ala la Rishonah. But before I brought the sacrifice and finished the process, I went to a chacham and said, listen, I really didn't want to be a Nazir. And you undo the first Nizirut, what happens? Al talosh ni'aba rishona. I don't need to wait another 30 days of Nizirut because the 30 that I'm supposed to do in the future already fits into those 30 days I've already done because I got rid of the first. So the second one takes the place of the first, kind of fills in there. And I can just bring the sacrifices and be done. So now, isn't that the same thing? Like here, I took the oath and then I undid the oath. Well, the other one kicks in. Okay, don't think, right? There's nothing anymore. So they say, no, these aren't the same. Hachi hashta, hatam nizirat mia'ita. What if I hadn't undone the first nizirut? The second one would have come into effect as soon as I finished the first. But in our case, the second oath wasn't anywhere in the world, right? In other words, you could say, in the end, we don't say that, but you can't learn it from nizirut because what we're doing in our oath case is saying, well, that oath really had no significance. It only has significance if you erase one, then it'll fill in its place. But that's not the same as the two Naziriyot, because the two Naziriyot would have been there anyway, whether I got rid of it or not. These two oaths wouldn't have been there anyway. The second oath wouldn't have been anywhere. So it's not necessarily clear from the Nazir case that we would say the same thing by the oath case. And that's why it's not really a proof. Okay, they were just trying to bring a Tanaitic proof for the way the Gemara understood the Mishna. It's just not a proof. Ending with Rava now. Rava brings a different halacha, which then we're going to basically ask, what language was used here, ochal or ochlena? And really neither works. Nishbal kikar v'achla. You took an oath on a kikar. Notice it doesn't say shelo ochal or shelo ochlena. And then you ate it. Im shiur mimena kazayit nish'al aleha. As long as there's still a kazayit left, you can still undo your oath. And then it turns out, whatever you ate, you're not liable for. Okay, retroactively. It's fascinating. Achla kula, but once you eat the entire loaf, ein nish'al aleha. It's too late at that point to undo your oath. So Amarle Rav Acha Bereid Rabba the Rav Ashi will end with this question. Hechidami, what's the case? Ida Amar Shelo Ochal, if you say that I won't eat, which means I won't even eat a kazayit, well, because I kama avdeli surah. It shouldn't be if there's still a kazayit left, you can undo your oath. It's too late as soon as you eat a kazayit's worth. It's not, doesn't matter what's left. You've already transgressed. Once you transgress, there's nothing to do. It's only if you haven't yet transgressed it that you can undo it. But if you've already eaten a kazayit, you're done. And this says, right, as long as there's a kazayit left. And ida amar shelo ochlena, and if you say that I won't eat the whole thing, my yuria kazayit, afilu kol shunami. Shouldn't matter a kazayit. It should say as long as there's a little bit of the loaf left, you're not, you can still undo it. So we don't know which language. We're going to get back to that tomorrow. So what we did today is we started with this obvious, clear halacha from the Mishnah, other than the fact that Rabbi Yehuda ben Beteira disagrees, but going with the shita of chachamim, a vow to not do a mitzvah or to yes do a mitzvah is not a valid vow. Then we had, where do we derive this from the Torah, right? And we had that long drasha with the different 5 parts. The first 2 related to that, and the other 2 related to side things relating to it. But it was all based on this lahara leitiv comparison. And since it's clearly you can't do that, you clearly can't do that. And that was our whole first part. We got to these 5 drashot cases where you might have thought you'd be liable and you're not, or you thought you'd be exempt and you actually are liable. Then we got from there to, why was it so obvious that the pasuk was not talking about mitzvah, it was talking about reshut? We had 3 explanations. The first one was long-winded, and in the end we rejected it because the same logic would apply to reshut as well. And therefore we got to either the O drasha, from there we can make an inference from that drasha, or according to Rabbi Akiva, right, the riboy and miut, it has to be mamayit something, it must be dvar mitzvah because there's nothing else to exclude. Then we went back to what's the continued conversation between Rabbi Yehuda ben Beteira and the rabbis, and we kind of filled in what they could have continued to say. From there, we went to the Shevuot, shelo chal, shelo chalena, shelo chalena, and we said specifically the order is important because if it was the reverse order, actually you would be liable more than one. And then why is it even significant to mention 3? And the idea is if you got rid of one, the other one would kind of go into place. It's still existing there. We tried to compare to Nazir, but we said it's not a fair comparison. And then we ended with this other case of Rava, and we're trying to figure out what language he was talking about, ochal or ochlena, and neither one really seems to work. that we finish for today. Wishing everyone a good day, Chodesh Tov, and B'sorot Tovot.